That's the only thing I just need to make sure of. It's Tom. I don't see James on yet. What we'll do while we're waiting for James then is we'll move on to 16.2. Merrick, if you could, the Modern Healthcare Committee minutes and the terms of reference.
Okay, thank you. Just one point, actually I've been trying to answer this question in the break, but not satisfactory, just for us, maybe for me to take away with Sal and Liz, is I think between these minutes and the previous set of minutes that we looked at the last board meeting, I'm not sure we actually state how much we've spent on all of the exceptional board papers that came through both through Modern Health and ones that are required into the main board meeting. But maybe that's a function of the fact that we can't put in the public domain the competing different prices. So that's something for me to look at. It's not abundantly clear from these minutes and previous ones how much money we've spent in short order on increasing capacity. So that aside, if I focus on the Modern Health minutes that we have in front of us here, which don't cover that spend because most of it was actually in the previous one, I think the key thing to note, we noted in that meeting and the meeting we've just had, is really what's already been touched on, but the exceptional performance in bringing elective work back online. And that was a function of really two things. Clearly, the exceptional hard work of everybody across the trust to make it happen. But in fact, many things that were plans that were laid out before COVID to do with the winter problems and getting elective work into Ashford. And we really, at the Modern Health Committee, applauded that performance, and we've touched on it earlier in the meeting today. In terms of the terms of reference, I don't think there's anything particularly to note in those, so I'll take any questions on them if there are, but that's really all I wanted to say on Modern Health.
Thank you, Merrick. Any questions on the Modern Healthcare Committee minutes? No? Okay. Your terms of reference, Merrick?
Well, as I say, I don't think there's anything particularly to note on them. Nothing of any significance has changed.
Okay. Anything on terms of reference, Modern Healthcare? No. Okay, we'll take those as agreed then. Thank you. I still don't see James on. Can somebody WhatsApp James to try and get him back? We do need him for the forms report. We'll carry on the agenda though. Chris, do you want to do the annual report for digital?
Okay, yes, I will take it as read. There are sort of three parts to it, really. There's the just to say that it's the scope is an annual report. It says it's biannual, but it's been agreed with the IDC that it's actually needs to be annual, and this is an annual report. So that's just something I just wanted to mention by exception. The rest, really, second part of it sort of outlines our activities and responsibilities. And the third part was an amendment to the TOR, which we discussed at the last open IDC. So it really, I guess it's by exception. Is there anything that anybody wants to note? I thought it was all quite self-explanatory. Perhaps I should mention around the IDC terms of reference that there was questions around membership, because the membership has got quite large now. It seems to be most of the board, which is not a bad thing. But I think also there was questions around titles, and the titles have evolved, and they've also evolved because of the difference in meaning between us and the Royal Surrey. So that's been made clear. Plus also our duties and responsibilities, it's made it more obvious around the delivery of the Surrey Safe Care value objectives. There are 5 key value objectives in terms of what the Cerner technology system will deliver for us. Asked parties around the committees being open and closed. So those are really the adjustments made to the terms of reference.
Okay, thank you. I think that was quite clear. Any questions for Chris? I know a lot of us sit on that committee anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. And anything with the minutes you wanted to bring to our attention there, Chris?
Right. So the minutes of the open, again, as I sort of reiterated at the in the closed board, since August we've had 2 open and closed in October. So by regulations I have to sort of refer to the August, but I'll sort of make reference, if you like, that we will be talking on the October ones in February at the next trust board. But what I wanted to make the point clear really was that there were certain parts to it around the BAF categorisation risk. So we're spending a lot of time around, you know, what are our activities, what are the end states we're trying to achieve, and how are we measuring that from a KPI point of view that outlines, you know, when we've got to that goal and what benefits have been derived from it. And just for your own, I guess, frame of reference, we look at everything we do in digital in 3 ways. Those sort of activities, areas of risk and KPIs that actually are around our transformational agenda. That's really important. So that's around the main digital programme, and the focus for that at the moment is Surrey Safe Care, EPR. But there's going to be things like robotics and AI in the future. Artificial intelligence, especially around repetitive tasks. And I know you talked about that at Tech in terms of cancer and what they've been doing at Royal Berkshire. So that's all great. So that's the first tranche. The second area is around what we call protect, and that's all our systems and what we have to do in terms of maintaining those systems or replacing them, such as the data care centre that we talked about today, to ensure that we are in a secure place to protect the hospital and the trust operationally and in terms of providing the right patient care. And the third area is around what Suzanne called defence, which I thought was great, which are the external threats. And this is what this closed board was talking about, open board was talking about, was around cyber security again, in terms of that being a third area of recognition, you know, making sure that the data migration issues are all tight, so that we protect our data and we protect our operational systems from external threats. So that's the difference between protect and defend. So I just wanted to make that point about the categorisation. The next thing, I guess, to just draw out from the report was, from the minutes rather, was around the initiatives and the way we're aligning with both the ICS, and Catherine Church took us through Surrey Heartlands and what they're doing. I don't sit on that programme board anymore, nor should I, because I'm a NED, I'm not an operational person. So we asked Catherine to consider whether there should be an assurance group on the Surrey Heartlands initiatives, just like there is in terms of my own role as chair of the Joint Digital Committee of Surrey Safe Care. And the other was really talking with Tom, and Tom took us through the operational model of how that's changed with ASPH. And then we went into a discussion around strategy, and in line with the sort of refresh that the organisation is going through in terms of Ashford and Peters, we thought that the environment had changed sufficiently and things have moved at pace to actually create a new digital strategy, particularly around what was happening in Surrey Heartlands, but also how we have to now look at new initiatives in the future. So we're going to do a new strategy rather than a refresh, and Tom is going to be very closely involved with Laura's team in making sure that we align with that. So that's what I really wanted to draw out for your benefit of these minutes.
Thank you, Chris. And just to say, I think, you know, from a main board committee now at Digital, I think we've moved significantly over the time under your chairmanship. And actually, you know, we're bringing to the board, you know, the big things around digital, and we're considering them at all levels. And I especially like the strategic risks. I think are exactly the right ones for this. Yeah. Anybody got any questions for Chris?
Oh, silence is golden. Wonderful.
No, and delighted to see also that we're moving forward with with the data center proposal as well. So that's good stuff. That will make us more resilient. Okay, so thank you for that, Chris. We're now going to go back. I see James has joined us. James, you have centre stage for your performance report.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for being a few minutes behind. So it's good because we've discussed performance issues. It's really nice to hear other people giving performance updates, actually. So it's even in Andrea's report today. So that's all encouraging that we're all linked in. So as we've said, October was difficult and it's becoming a challenge for us. So we're 81.3 or 88 if you use the NHSI model, the number, which puts us in the middle of the pack, so 40th and 44th in the country. So the important thing to notice from the report for us was that the attends are down, but admissions are continuing to go up. So the conversion rate to admission is higher. So that's important to recognise, that because attends are down, but admissions are still there. So that gives us a challenge. Running a COVID hospital is difficult. So it's difficult enough when we've got to find specialty wards and male or female beds, but when we have to find red specialty wards or green specialty wards and male and female, and then all the other nuances on top of that, it makes flow out of ED tougher. We are swabbing everybody before they move out of ED or certainly out of an assessment area. So that can create a delay for us, but it increases the safety onward from that point. And our ED is a lot smaller now because we've had to socially distance it. So it's well rehearsed discussions around why we need to look at our urgent care facilities in the organisation, but they're even smaller now. So we're hitting a full capacity protocol in ED at sort of 35-ish patients, where previously that would be in circa 70 because of the social distancing that we've had to do. So all of these things are creating significant challenge for us. And that's reflected in the performance here. And actually, as you can correlate our deterioration in performance, it still means that we're still mid in the country, so everyone is challenged. But some good news around what we've been doing. So we now have a right-sized UTC. So the work that Simon and Tom and colleagues have been doing with my teams around getting the UTC sorted, so we have an extended waiting room, and we on one end, and we vacated some admin stuff out the other end. So now that means that we can socially distance the UTC properly. We can move away from people queuing outside. So that is a really strong piece of work. We've got some doors gone up on some of the cubicles in ED, which means that we can sort our flows out a little bit better in there. And we've got plans moving ahead for our flow into other organisations. We were the highest user of Headley Court in October. So our efforts of working with system partners to get flow out of our organisation, that is coming off from the metrics. So we're the highest user in that month in the system. I'll go straight into electives now. I can take questions anyway, but just a few points to raise from electives. So RTT performance, although we are looking good. From Andrew's report, we've always been good. We were top 10 in the country throughout the last financial year. So that's going to put us in a stronger place than others. And our RTT performance is 82. The issue to be aware of is the growing numerator. So when we've got growing denominator, so the referrals are coming back on. So the referrals turned off. So our overall base of patients in our waiting list fell. And now they're coming back, which means until we hit 18 weeks from when the referrals increased again, our numerator is going to be increasing, which is going to make our percentage look better, if that makes sense. Now, that's obviously an issue nationally, but we're running at 83. Nationally, it's 60%. But that is just something to be aware of, that we don't want to get too excited about that, because those numbers will come through and then come over 18 weeks. What we'd have alluded to, shown in the paper, is our recovery trajectories, and this was called the phase 3 restoration. So whilst we're achieving on our trajectory, so we have delivered what we said we'd deliver, should just bear in mind that those are a proportion of last year's activities. So we've said that we will deliver our elective trajectory we have, but that's 75% of what we were doing in the same month last year. So we're still 25% under the elective capacity that we had 12 months ago. For outpatients, it's much closer, and for diagnostics, it's a really good story. But there is some uncertainty going forward for us in terms of electives. So our delays in the Ashford theatres, which are somewhat out of our control, but we have 3 theatres there now that are finished, but we can't use yet because there's slight things to finish on them. That's had an impact. And the IS contract that we talked about earlier, moving from outsourcing to rental, is going to have an impact on us going forward from the 1st of January. But some good things. So each time I highlighting challenge, I'm also highlighting good things. So we've gone live with our ophthalmic theatres at Ashford. So these are the 2 theatres that we've brought into Ashford site. They've gone live now, and our first patients have been through those. So that's 2 theatres in addition to the main theatre complex that is gone live. So that's helpful, but that was already built into our trajectory. So that's great. And we've got our elective site plans to develop Ashford into the elective site. So going live with the recruitment for PACU and the elective ward are happening. So that's good things. In terms of diagnostics, you can see in the report that's one of our stronger areas, and it is where we can give assurance. So we've turned on, and we had some very good impacts on MRI, CT in those diagnostic areas with additional CT from the Nightingale that we got really helped. But a lot of people are envious of what we've been able to do in terms of our endoscopy recovery. So we are live with our 2 endoscopy units that came on site to the St. Peter's site, and we're running now 140% of pre-COVID activity through endoscopy. So you remember that we had a lot of work to do prior to COVID already, but so the fact that we're running at 140% now is a really good sign that we're getting a grip of that sort of big agenda in front of us. When we come into the new financial year, we should be getting close to some kind of recovery back to national standards. We'll be well ahead of peers, I think, many peers in relation to that. I'll leave it there and take questions. I think it's important, when we read the report, to just realise that how much is going on. When we haven't just got urgent. So the issue is where I think gets lost in the media a lot is that we aren't just trying to run a hospital through COVID. We're running with winter pressures, which we can see coming through our ED. The numbers are there. The number of admissions are high. Up until 48 hours ago, our COVID was giving us a huge pressure in the organisation, up to 80 patients in there. That's come down a bit. But we're running through a COVID pandemic. Our staff are tired. We've got pressures through ED. We've got additional COVID inpatient pressure. We are trying really hard to keep our elective side together so that we don't create more backlogs. But we're also running with the impact of a backlog that we created through the first wave. So the amount of validation that we're having to do is significant on top of it. So, for example, we're validating at the moment 2,000 patients on the elective waiting lists as a result of the backlog we created the first time. So it's not just a single thing. It's the effect of backlogs before, it's effect of running through a pandemic now, and the winter pressures and unmet demand that was out there during COVID. It's making it a particularly challenging time.
Thanks, James. Yeah. And, keeping in mind just how challenging, this phase 3 performance on recovery is extraordinary. Been, a real thank you, I think, to everybody involved in that. And we are one of the leaders in that. So
I think we are doing very well, and I did take reassurance from yesterday in the south of England COOS network that Anne Eden ran. We are there was sort of sharing best practice. I mean, we're already on that. We're already creating a standalone elective green site, which makes good sense outside of COVID. In COVID, it's incredibly sensible. We're already on that journey. We're already using the electronic tools like My Pre-Op that they were recommending there. So it's good that we're on these things, but it's just a bit of a hard slog.
So, any questions from board members on James's report? I'm aware that it's been through modern healthcare and quality, of course. Jane.
I just sorry, I put my camera on. Thank you, James. I think I just wanted to say that at the Quality Committee, we were really pleased to see all the work that's been done on diagnostics, because it was an area we were particularly concerned about. And I think I think the team need to be really congratulated because they've done excellent work on that. So thank you, James, because we know that we were concerned that often with diagnostics, you don't know what you're dealing with until you've obviously done the test. So actually, I think the fact that we're way ahead of our peers on that is excellent work. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, I mean we're still 30%. Well, 30% of our sort of endoscopy type procedures are within the national standard. So 2/3 of what we do isn't. So we've still got a long way to go. I suppose it's just really encouraging that we're running at a significantly accelerated pace, and we can demonstrate that now very clearly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
James, I know that in modern healthcare we touched on the delays at Ashford, but to what extent are we putting huge pressure on our contractors? Because it's a matter of fact that the more pressure you put on, the more likely you are to get things done. And we should be putting unreasonable pressure on them, I think.
Yeah. I leave it to Simon and Tom to.
Tom?
I think, I mean, we put pressure on them, and we try to only agree programs that are going to deliver in the time frame that we need to have them. And of course, but they kind of face operational pressures like everybody else with workforce and all the rest of it. And we work very closely with our contractors. The contractors that we use are contractors that we've become familiar with and know our site, know how to work with us and all the rest of it. We have a good relationship with those contractors, generally speaking, and I think they understand the operational pressures that we have to work with. So we do put pressure on them because our requirements are quite stringent. We ask them to work over weekends and all the rest of it. Nighttime working isn't so good because, of course, that's more disruptive. But we do what we can. I don't know whether Simon wants to add anything to that.
So Tom, let's be in slightly defence of what you've said. This isn't an issue of contractors working at a certain speed. This particular one is of parts that are in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, but around the Ashford theatres. Yeah, well, I think we've now got the delivery date for those ahead of Christmas, so that makes us all a lot more relieved that it won't go over the year end.
Okay. Tom, I mean, just to add, the supply chains are really, really complex. So we have no direct relationship with that pendant manufacturer, as an example. It's subcontracted through about 3 or 4 companies before we get to that. Now, Andrew and the team have absolutely been through that whole chain and have put pressure all the way to the end of it to get these things delivered. So it was really, really good news once we'd had that, chased through and confirmed, and they're signed off, they're made, and they're, eddying for the Channel Tunnel, I suspect.
I mean, that's good news. I mean, all I was thinking was, are we putting the pressure on? The answer is yes. And the fact that we're putting the pressure on right the way across the supply chain is also assuring, actually.
I mean, just to add, Andy, sort of 20 years ago, we would have had people managing that supply chain all the way through. With modern practices, we've ended up with contractual relationships kind of through those. And I think we're moving back to the older style. A few extra people absolutely chasing these all the way through during this kind of pandemic situation is what's required, really. So sometimes you can get too slick, and it can bite us, really.
Yes, and goodness knows what will happen on the 1st of January, of course, when we're trying to get things from Germany.
That's another reason to make sure that all our future deliveries, particularly around the Chestnut works, but also the redevelopment in the A&E car park as well. So we're on those as well. That's the reassurance I'd want to do.
Okay, Marcin.
James, just a question on the performance in ED. It has a line of COVID and non-COVID. COVID, obviously, the performance is slower. Just a question whether the new faster testing will support you in actually moving patients through a bit quicker.
Yes, it will do when it comes online. So the faster testing we've got in the first instance, the one that you've been hearing about, is lateral flow, and that's been targeted at staff.
It's working now.
And that's very specific for staff. It's got tight definitions around what that can be used for. We have got faster machines, but it's the capacity of them. So we've got our Samba. They're the ones that have got a 2-hour turnaround, but we've only got 5 of them, and it's 6, and we can only, so we're doing about just over 100 a day. And so things are getting better. We've got there's a prospect of faster machines coming online. The virologists are quite excited about the prospect of some additional machines as well. But we are in a far better position than we were when we started this. But it is, I mean, the problem we've got this time is we used to move people out of ED to other areas. Now we don't do that because A, we don't have the other areas, and B, that, you know, it's pretty much there for us. So it will help. The faster testing will help, but you know, it's not at the moment.
Okay, thank you
Better
very
than
much.
it was, though. 2 hours is much better than 2 days. Yeah.
Yeah, but it already cuts half into your target, doesn't it? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we just need to get better at identifying where there's a high likelihood of admission as well. So there are things that we can do, which we are working through with the ED team. We have a whole piece around that.
Thank you, James.
James, I was on a call yesterday, and the chair of CCAM was drawing attention to the increasing problems they're facing, particularly in Kent, actually, rather than us.
Yeah.
What are we seeing with regard to ambulance waits currently? I know it's in the report, but that's obviously historical.
Yeah. Well, you can see in it. You can see that. I mean, in October we had 5. I mean, we don't 5 or 6. I mean, we hadn't had any since April, or well, 1, I think. So we are seeing ambulances waiting longer in our organisation in some instances as a result of this. But you know, we're not unique. Our ED has significant less capacity than it had before, and that gives us a challenge. But the onward flow up to the wards is, you know, because of the capacity issues I've explained. So you will see some more in November. But we do work closely with CCAM. They've deployed a Halo to us on a number of occasions. Halo is one of their support oversight people that helps coordinate and helps the crews when they're here. So that's happened a few times to help us. But I think from what I'm hearing, I mean, there are trusts in a lot worse position than we are.
Oh yes, and
in terms of ambulance handovers.
Yeah. That was very clear that Kent was particularly an issue for them at the moment, and Surrey and Sussex were better. But obviously we have our problems. Okay. Anything else for James? No. Thank you, James.
Can I?
Lily, we don't take questions at the board. Only those that have been put in ahead of time. Sorry. Okay, James. So we'll let you off. Thank you.
Thank you.
In which case we move down to Marcin with the People Committee minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to highlight 3 things which link to the September minutes and, of course, last week's meeting. And that's really the NHS People Plan that came out. In the September board minutes you read, it's about announcing what the People Plan includes, how it links to our strategy and our transformation plan. But then it was exciting to see in our November meeting, Louise did a very good reconciliation of where we're at against all of the recommendations and actions. And I'm pleased to say that there were no red risk areas. Everything is either completed, in progress, or on delay, but for a specific reason as we consider it. I'd also like to highlight, also from the September minutes and the November minutes, our vacancy rate. It's the lowest position it has been for the last 6 years, which is congratulations to Louise and her team for all the recruitment they've been doing throughout this COVID pandemic, with all the other actions that they've had to undertake. And the last point I want to point out from the September minutes that also fed through to a discussion in our November committee is the EU exit and EU implications for our staff. We have 493 EU staff, and nearly half now have either settled status or have made an application. But it leaves another half that we're obviously concerned of creating any kind of gap in workforce. And we heard particularly from two divisions where this impacts, which is estates and facilities with porters and housekeeping, but also our therapies, where we have quite a lot of EU staff, and that would create massive vacancies. So it's something that Louise and her team with the divisions are having ongoing engagement to try and either provide support, provide the resources, but just really stay on top of the issue. So that's all I'd like to say on the minutes from September, and really a flow through to November. And we had a really rich discussion. It was an excellent meeting. And I want to thank Louise and her team. The key point on the agenda today on my bits was to bring forward a paper on the medical appraisal and revalidation for the board to approve that we commend from the People Committee. And I'd just like to say a couple things about that, Chairman. Okay? Okay. And David's obviously here. It's a good news story. It shows again that we comply with the requirements. We obviously appraisals were paused for medical staff during the COVID, but we'd already completed 372 of our over 400 doctors, so we were already in a good position. So it meant that actually we only had 31 be missed for COVID, and that's actually creates us rates post-COVID of a higher rate of compliance than it did the previous year. We had 15 deferred for sickness and 2 missed for other reasons that were approved by David, our responsible officer. I think interesting, page 13 and 14 that are summed up on page 17, which is about concerns that David has as RO about certain medical practitioners and their referral to the GMC. So it gives you an explanation of the different kinds of reasons that people are referred to, either insufficient information, that they're looking for more information to substantiate what's in the revalidation, or actually there was only some concerns about practice. But I'm just pleased to say that we recommend approval of this report. It's an excellent report, and it's a very open and transparent and honest report. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Marcin. David, anything to add?
No, I think Marcin's covered it all very well. Thank you, Marcin.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this? And I believe this has to be signed either by Suzanne or myself. Is that's right?
That's correct. Once the board gives you the approval.
Yeah, indeed. So queries? No.
Excellent.
Good. No, I thought it was a very clear report. Very, very good. Obviously, I was there when it went through People Committee. We asked all the relevant questions, and it's a well-run procedure. There are things to do clearly next year, which are also highlighted very, very well. So thank you to whoever draws up this report, David. Perhaps you could pass on our thanks for that.
I will.
Because it's a very good report.
I think I just would like to end then, Chairman, with saying to on the board on behalf of People Committee that people and our workforce are still our highest risk. We are concerned about their weariness and their exhaustion. And you can hear even today from all the reports how hard everybody's working to both respond to COVID, but to re-establish all of our services, as well as transform our services, as well as work with our community. And we really ought to say thank you to Louise and team and everybody on behalf of the board for all they're doing to support our staff with health and well-being. And we're really getting an understanding of where our staff are worried and concerned, and where we're actually having some impact with our well-being resource and offering. So I'd like to say thank you. I work really well with Louise and her team, and I think they're fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, and that's well-deserved plaudit, Louise. Please take it back to your team.
I will, and I'll pay Ms. Marcin later.
No payment needed. Love you.
Right. That's fine. So thank you for and yes, we're very cognizant of the risk around people, and I think it is so important. And things like getting the wellbeing centre done, moving that on. Interestingly, I had which I haven't passed on to you yet, Louise. I've passed it to Suzanne. An anonymous donor who wishes to help with the wellbeing area, who has emailed me yesterday, I think, or the day before. So we are getting, people are realising, and so you know, we've got plenty of things to spend it on, which will be really well received by staff, I know.
Yeah, that's great to hear that, Andy. I suppose it probably would be also right to just to make the board aware that we are in the process of our planning for the COVID vaccination. So this is clearly another aspect of wellbeing and safety for our workforce. At the moment, all of the detail is still a little unclear, but we are working at pace, and we've now joined the testing cell. So we brought those two cells together. So we're working at pace to both make sure that we can get the staff testing piece in, as well as the vaccination programme, which will start for healthcare workers in December.
Thank you. And we've got the relevant cold storage on site, I think. I heard yesterday.
Yeah, we won't need to cold store it. It will come, and we will then need to use it within a certain amount of time. So
Okay.
It has kind of like very complicated fragility in terms of its storage. But yes, we're on top of all of that as well.
Okay.
But that's only if we get the one of the two, right? We don't really know which one we're getting.
I think we're a little bit closer to knowing that, but no, we don't know that yet.
Okay.
No, it's
Can I
likely
just say one thing, Andy, that I know we're this afternoon, after we're going to talk about our charity strategy, but the Wellbeing Center is a really good one to go to our community and ask for help and support.
Yes.
And I actually think you would see a massive amount of support. It just needs somebody to ask the community. So just a last thought.
I think that's right. I'm absolutely right. And I think, yeah. Okay, and that's good to know about the vaccination and lateral flow testing. Clearly, there's going to be a lot more pressure on people as well to get that done. And as I understand it from yesterday's meeting, that we probably do know which vaccine it is, but we're not in a position to say that yet.
Yeah, still unclear. We're still waiting for confirmation.
Yeah.
Can I just make a point just in relation to Marcin's last, which is just to say we're hoping to improve staff wellbeing next spring by planting a whole lot of bulbs around the site, and we've had 1,000 crocus bulbs donated from the local Rotary Club, Chertsey, which a group of us are getting our dibbers out on Saturday, and we're going to plant them around the site. Nicola's also talking to some other nurseries about some other donations of a similar type. So if you're interested in planting bulbs this winter before the frost sets, come and join us.
Yeah, that's important, and hopefully as well, just while we're on this and we've got a couple of minutes, one of the issues that staff have raised with me is that the internal gardens and the problems with pigeons, making it actually quite dangerous, as we found in Remembrance Day, to walk in them because they're very slippy. So have we got an answer yet, Tom, to the pigeon problem?
I believe a hawk is doing a regular flyby, and there will be some netting. So yeah,
concrete owls. Concrete owls apparently very effective.
Yeah,
but yeah, we wouldn't want to be seen as pigeon exterminators, but they are creating an unwelcome mess in our well-being areas.
Yeah, the hawk is a deterrent, and it is happening. I mean, and we've got a group of people meeting on Tuesday afternoon just to work out how we kind of get a bit of a volunteer army together to help really kind of, get out there and tidy up our gardens and our external spaces. We've got a really good groundsman, so we want to link in and support him. So yeah, we are taking some action on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on from that. Thank you for that. And we'll move on to the regulatory section and the board assurance framework. Now, normally Suzanne leads on this. Who's going to lead on that? Sal, are we?
Yes, I'm happy to give an overview. So the board assurance framework comes to each meeting, and the updates from each of the board subcommittees having met during the month are incorporated within the report. And during the round in October, November, there were 2 changes to the risk scores. As you can see, those 2 people risks, which Marcin spoke to just a moment ago. And there was also 1 additional Modern Healthcare Committee risk identified in relation to potential external impacts from ICS level financial and activity and waiting list positions. So that is proposed for inclusion and was approved by the Modern Healthcare Committee. And there is an overview of all of the BAF risks and the scores and risk appetite levels included.
Okay, thank you, Sal. Just checking, Merrick, is there anything you want to say about the additional risks put on?
Well, not really, other than there's not much further to go on any of these risks in terms of the levels they're at. I mean, there comes a point when how functional is a risk register in this context when everything is at the high level? I mean,
it's true. I mean, it's the mitigations that matter, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the KPIs. Marcin is trying to say something. Marcin?
Say that if we don't have the KPIs, then you actually doesn't make a lot of, all this is now not going to make a lot of sense. And my team know that, Tom and Sal know that. Next time this comes to board, it better have the KPIs, because that'll tell the story. And it'll also validate, as Merrick says, whether the mitigations are working or not. Because you're absolutely right. This must stay, alive.
Yeah, and otherwise it's a meaningless piece of paper, isn't it? The conversations I've sat in on the various committees, there's some good discussions going on KPIs at the moment. They just haven't all quite landed. So every committee is absolutely looking at them. Not all of them have landed them yet, but I think that's the challenge, to land them by January. Any comments on anything from any board member on what we've got now? An awful lot of red there. Which isn't a surprise. Okay, right, so can we approve that then, those changes? Yes. Okay, speak now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, we can now move on to the very important, actually, the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian annual report. Keith, you're going to lead on this one?
I am. Suzanne, who's the exec lead, obviously is not with us, so in my capacity as a non-exec lead, there's quite a lot to cover in this report, so I'm just going to draw out a few key highlights for members, and then you can pick up on anything. Charlotte Broughton, who is now our Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, took up her post at the beginning of this year, and the real benefit has been that she has had 2 days of her week devoted to this work, whereas previous Guardian, Jackie Rees, was doing that alongside a full-time job. So there's been considerably more focus and input on this, which is good. You'll see, I'll draw your attention to the 4th page of this document has a table that looks back over the last 5 years, and you'll see that this shows in the current sort of green column that we've been making slow but steady progress in terms of our team's willingness to raise concerns and feeling that their concerns are being listened to and being acted upon. So we're not where we'd like to be, and if we look at the chart below that, you'll see that we're almost bang in the middle of the sort of the national spread of trusts, but it's good to see that we are at least moving slowly and steadily in the right direction. And that's historic data, so the fact that Charlotte's been working on this during 2020 isn't yet reflected in those numbers. Then I'd like to just roll down onto the 6th page, and in some of the narrative here, there's a section on culture and overseas nurses, and this has been a concern I think we were aware of as a board, actually, going back in terms of our retention challenge a year or more ago, and this unsurprisingly is echoed then in the sort of the flow through of concerns that come up in the freedom to speak channel. This is now being focused on, and so that's an area that is good to see being worked on. Then on the 7th page, we've got a table and a chart. The table, actually, if you're sharp-eyed, isn't complete, but the chart shows that the contacts that have been made with the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian have been rising fairly steadily quarter by quarter. Okay, there's fluctuation, but you can see a clear trend over the last 3 or 4 years. This is like some of the other things where we have a mix of, is it good news or is it bad news? I think it's good news because it means that people are feeling more comfortable about raising concerns and feeling that it's worthwhile doing so. The concern, which you may pick up in reading this, is that a lot of those issues are flagged anonymously. So for whatever reason, people are feeling less comfortable about putting their name to something they're raising. It may be they just don't want the hassle of following it through. They just want to flag it. It may be that they feel that through their immediate work colleagues or supervisors, that somehow that will reflect badly on them. So that's something we keep an eye on. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything else I particularly want to draw attention to. Yeah, that's, I think, gives you all the headlines from this. So very happy to discuss. I can see Louise is going to come in. Thank you, Louise.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Really well presented. So thank you for doing that. Obviously, Charlotte, in her capacity as Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, is supported by a number of ambassadors in the organisation. And it's great to have this facility where people can raise issues on purpose. This role doesn't report into the workforce team, and that's a decision that we make so that it does feel like people have an avenue, an independent avenue to be able to raise issues. And clearly, if as a result of that then needs to be HR intervention, then we would get involved. It's really good to see the work that Charlotte's done this year with our Black and minority ethnic network, in particular trying to encourage the network to socialise what the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian role and support network is for, but also to encourage the network to think about whether or not some of their members might become champions. So that's an ongoing piece, but really important. And Charlotte went along to the network in the summer, presented to them, and has maintained quite close contact. But really important that, particularly if we're seeing an increase in issues from our overseas nurses, that we've got an ability to be able to get that feedback quickly and manage any of those issues and resolve them, which is the sort of whole point of this process. So yeah, just wanted to give the board just a little bit more detail in terms of that work, because it really, sort of is significant in terms of engaging that network effectively.
Thank you, Louise. Just to comment, your microphone may be a bit close to your mouth because you're getting a bit of that's it, just interference, shall we say? Any other colleagues?
Yeah, I think Jane and Marcine. Jane.
Oh, thank you, Keith and Louise. I just want to say I know that Charlotte has been doing some great work, particularly during COVID, in actually walking the wards and actually actively engaging. So that really makes people feel able to talk, and I think she's done a really excellent piece of work this year. I'm just a little concerned because I know that there may be a change in that role going forward, and I'm just sort of anxious that we don't lose the momentum of where we are. And I just want a little bit of assurance around that, really.
Yeah, so I must admit I'm not up to date with where we are with Charlotte's replacement. Andrea may know. Certainly Charlotte is staying within the organisation. She's been promoted, so it's excellent. She's going to lead the PALS and complaints team, and I'm sure will do a fabulous job. but I think we are looking for a replacement to her as the overall guardian. And Andrea, I'm not sure if you know where we are with that recruitment process.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. I mean, Charlotte is an exceptional individual. Actually, she's done such fabulous work, hasn't she, around this freedom to speak up. There's no two ways about it, and we're delighted for her to be promoted on promotion, actually, as head of patient experience and involvement. Currently, she's going to keep, because we want to get the right person to take over this role. So she starts in her new role on Monday, but she is just holding on for now with the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian piece, with support from Jackie Rees, who held that appointment previously, until we get the right person to take over from her, because it's absolutely crucial. So there is a transition, but it's sustained, as it were. So
thank you for that. Thank you.
And I think there was a recruitment, but nobody suitable came forward. Was that was right? Wasn't
yeah,
it?
Hence why we're doing the plan as we're doing.
Marcin.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Keith, for the report. Just a couple points from me. I'm wondering whether the People Committee ought to have a kind of a deep dive or a look, or be kept informed about the work around overseas nurses' experiences, because I am concerned to read this, that I don't think it has been reported to People Committee that it's such a particular issue. And I just think we ought to keep a watchful eye on that. I'm also interested about the hiring a psychotherapist for about trauma, and whether we should have a look at that as well, and the impact of that. And I'm just wondering from Keith whether we have seen an increase in the number of ambassadors, given you said that was going to be a big push in October to get them. Were you successful? Thank you.
I'm not aware yet as to the outcome of that push, and I think it may have got caught up in the move that Charlotte's now undertaking. Going back to your other comment about the involvement of People Committee, yes, I think if there are general themes coming through, then they should indeed be flagged to you. As I say, I don't think this is complete surprise or something new, rather, because it was something we were aware of, a year or more ago. But I think it would be appropriate for a channel to be opened up from the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian to the relevant colleague, it's fairly senior colleague within the People team, the Workforce Directorate, just so that those themes can be picked up. Obviously, individual cases can't really be flagged.
So Matthew Barker, who is the Deputy Chief Nurse at the moment, seconded into urgent and emergency care, but also has been leading a lot of the workforce programmes, has made significant connections with the overseas nurses since he came into post, and does have regular meetings with them, and has been exploring the issues with them. So happy to at some point do that deep dive, Marcin. Obviously, we're very conscious of the effort of recruiting people, the cultural integration and the work that goes into making people feel at home, and then the potential for people to leave us quite quickly. So we are obviously very conscious of that.
So I could bring Dami in here, and just to let the board members know that Dami has volunteered to be the non-executive director for EDI for the trust going forward, and given the overseas nurses, I think this is entirely appropriate as well. Dami.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Keith, for the report. I just had two questions. Well, one main question. The other had been asked about whether more ambassadors had been recruited, but I think you've answered that, Keith. The second question was about the anonymous flagging. So it was good that there was a lot of contact, but a little bit concerning that majority of them were anonymous. And I just wondered if there was a way to mitigate that. And I'm going to refer back slightly to the significant incidents reporting, where there's an app, the Unmasking Your Story app. I wonder if that could be linked in a little bit more to the Freedom to Speak Up, in a way that people could share some more information in a pseudo-anonymized way. So they'll have the option either to declare their identity or not, but it could be traced back perhaps to the app I just wondered if there was a technological way around it.
I'm not familiar with the app, and I'm not sure whether it would be right, even if it was technologically feasible, to then use that as a way of tracing back to the person, even which department or something they were working in. I mean, it's concerning that a significant proportion are using the ability to raise concerns anonymously, but of course it makes it very difficult because we can't go and ask them why they're doing that. I'm not sure, and Louise may be giving this thought as well, as to how we try to improve that sort of outcome. But I think it's just good that at least concerns are being raised, and we can at least take action on those, and we can learn from and you see there's a number of charts showing the sort of distribution of what issues the concerns are gathered around. It's not ideal, but at least what we're getting is still valuable.
I think probably Louise and Andrea have both got things to say about. Interesting suggestion, by the way, Dami. Louise.
So Dami, I think, is referring to the SenseMaker project that I think as Andrea was describing earlier, and I think anything we can do that communicates and advertises and promotes that. And promotes people being open and transparent and sharing their stories is a great idea, and may mean that people will access the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian in a way that's a bit more open and transparent. But I think it is about promoting that, but it's also about making sure that people have a safe way in which they can raise their concerns, because the raising of the concerns themselves is the most important aspect for us.
Andrea?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think it's about, setting the conditions, isn't it, for people to be able to speak up. The only bit I would say, actually, Dan, I think it could have some utility, only that not from to identify an individual, but maybe to identify an area, actually, because then it would enable us to have that intelligence that if there's quite a flurry of concerns coming up from the same sort of area, say theatres, just as an example, then that would trigger certainly for me to think, well, and maybe David as well, that we might need to go in and do some focus work around that, depending on if it's a quality issue, etc., or a safety issue. So I don't know, it's a really good suggestion, and maybe there is scope to have some utility with that. But I do agree, it's about promoting that SenseMaker piece as well, with people using that.
Does that answer your question, Dami?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good discussion, actually, because I certainly had the amount of anonymised ones as a worry bead, really, because to me it means people are worried about comebacks, and it may not be just that, but I think it's more likely to be that. So anything we can do to promote, this is a channel for them. I mean, they've got, the workforce have many channels. They've got their staff governors, for example. We meet regularly with Louise, obviously the normal management channel, but this channel is really, really important. So I think we'll probably do another campaign, actually, but if we can get those local people in place, even better.
I think it illustrates a bit of a culture change as well, Andy, to be fair. And I think, we are on a journey with this. I mean, golly, the amount of people now that are really using this Freedom to Speak Up Guardian is fantastic as to where it was, a few years ago. So, I think it's as time will go on, I'm sure people will feel more comfortable about sort of putting their name to stuff.
Okay. Anything else for Keith or for the team on this report? It's a good report. I was conscious that it hadn't been to board for a while, and I sort of mentioned it to Charlotte, and she was straight on the case, as is her wont. And I'm delighted as well, by the way, that she's got that role. I think she'll be great in her new role, and I would absolutely support that getting the right person is more important than getting a person at the right time who isn't necessarily suitable. Okay, Andrea, you've still got your hand up, is that? Okay, that's fine. Okay, we'll move on then. Thank you for that, Keith, doing that. So you've still got the floor because you have the Audit and Risk Committee minutes.
Yes, thank you, Andy. So we've got two sets of minutes. One, the approved minutes from June, and that's now almost fairly ancient history. That's when we had the challenges around the audit opinion, particularly. That was the main focus of the June meeting, and so I think we've subsequently followed through on that. And you'll see from the draft minutes of our meeting in just 5 weeks ago that you know, we are looking to plan appropriately to avoid that sort of challenge the audit at the end of March this year, or next year I should say. The reason that you've got draft minutes from October is because I've specifically asked to have the minutes prepared quickly, for me at least, to be able to review them, and for then the board to have visibility rather than wait until we have our next Audit and Risk Committee meeting. There's not usually any concern about the quality of minutes because they're very excellently taken by Miriam, and I think it's more valuable to have them sooner and rather than, as I say, long after the event. Fairly routine business for our October meeting. Good area that we looked at was the benchmarking reports. It's not actually attached to this document, but it showed that we are in the top quartile or even the top 10% in terms of benchmarking ourselves against comparable trusts. And you know, that's certainly you know, a very good reflection on the work of our colleagues. Happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Keith. So any questions on either the June minutes or indeed the draft October minutes? And I think that was a good idea, bringing the draft October minutes. Thank you. I think that does bring us up to date, that we can have a look at that. Any questions? No. Nope. Okay. Thank you. And then we come to the perennial use of the trust seal. Simon, we got anything there?
Yeah, there's 5 on this time around, so quite a busy period of time. They're mainly collateral agreements, which is the warranties, if you like, for some of the estates work that we've been doing of late. I think we also noted the Chestnut Ward works were signed off, and I think that's it for the 5. So happy to take any questions. It's all routine.
Yeah, all seems routine. Any queries on those? No, they've all been signed off at the right level, so that's fine. Just on I think, have the Chestnut work started now?
Yes, they started about a week ago. Yeah.
Yes, they have.
I thought they had.
Well,
yeah. And just so board members know, that was, in my view, absolutely the right decision. That we've had to take some bed capacity out, but that is to do our expanded ITU capability, and to do that whilst our ITU usage is relatively low, has got to be right. And then we'll have a much enhanced capability for later, because you know none of us know where this is going. But when's the end of Chestnut? When's
the works will finish on Christmas Eve, which means that subject to cleaning and so on, we'll be able to use the beds. James will have access to the beds to use as he needs them to be used between Christmas and New Year period. So just when we need them, really.
And given our previous optimism bias on all matters estates, what's your confidence level on the 24th of December?
Well, I've made it very clear that any delay on that is actually going to be really, really problematic, because you start to then get into post Brexit blues, etc., which I think make it very difficult operationally to actually make use of those. So I'm reasonably confident.
Okay, thank you. Didn't mean to divert us down that route, but as Chestnut was mentioned, then I thought it was useful. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. we move on to the board register of interests. Now, hopefully everybody has looked at their own and made sure that they are up to date. And certainly, I know the team have been out to you. Any inaccuracies, please? Please do flag them. David.
Yeah, I just raised that I relinquished the role of MAC chair, which is always going to be the plan. So that's no longer that. And I did declare that I did a webinar for Sanofi. So that's updated on another registry. So Liz is aware.
Okay, thank you, David. Anybody else got any additions or subtractions from this? No, good. In which case that goes, Sal, that goes onto our website as well, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes,
okay.
Published.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to any other business. Anybody got anything else that they wish to discuss? No? Just to say, of course, that we are awaiting a verdict from the Sophie Burgess inquest that Suzanne is at, and that's not due till tomorrow, but the first day is today. Nothing more to say on that, really, until we know the outcome. Okay, so we now move on then to questions from the public. Just for the members of the public who are on this, our way of doing this online is that we advertise for questions to be submitted beforehand. And we have had one question, and I know Rosemary is on. I've seen that. So David, do you want to take this question? Two questions actually from Rosemary.
Yes, happy to. It's good. Yeah, so the first question was, who in Ashford St Peters is responsible for overseeing care of mental patients with physical problems and vice versa? So we often, as Rosemary and everyone knows, is that patients often present with a combination of both physical and mental health issues, or people with mental health issues are admitted with a physical problem. And if they're in Ashford St Peters, we are supported by Surrey and Borders Mental Health Trust through their liaison service. And actually, on the inpatient side, that's a well integrated team, and particularly in the elderly medicine department where dementia is quite common. The team are there a great deal of the time. The other area where we rely heavily on the liaison service is in the accident and emergency department, where people present often with a combination of disease, but sometimes with mental health as their primary issue. And again, we're supported by Surrey and Borders through their liaison team, which links in with the A&E physical team. The second question was, why isn't space in the Abraham Cowley unit being used for A&E mental health patients? I suppose that what we need to do is, we do know, as I just said, that patients present often to the accident emergency department with a combination of physical problems and mental health issues, either primary, and one of those is primary, the others often secondary. And therefore, what we have been doing is concentrating very hard that we have got the right infrastructure in place in the A&E department to look after patients. And we've been talking regularly with Surrey and Borders as to how we deliver the expertise to those patients. As we know from these reports at the board, often there are sometimes delay in the care of these patients in the A&E department, and we are hoping that we can resolve this with the new A&E build and with some of the work we're now doing with Surrey and Borders. Why there isn't a space over at the accident and emergency department? I mean, the onward destination of patients when they come to the A&E department is often the desired destination is home with support, and that's the primary aim of the liaison service. or to provide some inpatient capacity in the mental health unit. And there has been some issues with capacity, and this is why they're doing some of the building work at Abram Cowley unit. I agree with the question that we need to make sure that the separation of physical and mental health disease is broken down to a great extent, so we have greater integration of working, and there are regular meetings between our teams in St Peter's and Surrey and Borders to try and bring that forward. I hope that's helpful.
So David, just going back to question 1 then.
Yeah.
There's no one person other than yourself ultimately, of course, who's responsible for overseeing the mental health patients. Is it? It's either the attending clinician in A&E or the if they get admitted to a physical health ward, it's the consultant in charge of that ward. Is that right?
Yes, and they're supported by, so an example would be is on the SAMS ward there is a lot of psychologists and a psychiatrist who are part of the liaison team, although they spend most of the time in Ashford and St Peter's, and they're supporting the teams with the mental health aspects of the care of those patients. But when they're in this organisation, it'll be the treating clinician who's looking after them from a physical point of view.
Okay, so and of course we cannot we cannot say to Surrey and Borders, give us part of your infrastructure to use. As you say, Abraham Cowley's been remodelled at the moment anyway, and it's not close enough to our A&E for utility. So okay, so those questions will be documented, the answers, and obviously I think Rosemary's listening anyway to have got those answers. So we're moving on. I'm pleased to say we're slightly ahead of time. So reflection on today's meeting. Anybody, any reflections on today's meeting? Neil.
I think it's a reflection that we've had before. The reality is, if at various times in the past we've suggested the hospital was running hot, then in reality what we've seen this year and what we're ramping up for now across winter just says even more so. And I think when we look at the operational performance of the hospital, it's then quite reassuring to see, particularly from the performance report and also the quality committee minutes and update, that actually we're still focusing a lot of care and attention on trying to get things as correct and as right as possible, because pressure would undoubtedly have created, and we've flagged it in the BAF, kind of greater risk of some of those things falling to one side. So we can take some comfort from where we sit in league tables, and I guess some concern from the fact that every time we get it wrong, it affects somebody's life and livelihood. I think my other reflection was just how much effort each member of this executive team puts into their area, but connecting and joining the whole. So since collaborate is a big part of who we are and what we do, I think they have demonstrated it again today. I think the real issue facing the NHS perhaps more generally, and not just our trust, is that the public perception on how things should be in a hospital and the reality of the operational situation that our colleagues here are facing, they are at odds with one another. I'm not entirely convinced, honestly, that the tiering system that's in the middle of being announced today is going to ease the pressure in the short term. I think it's going to get worse. So I just commend all of you for your hard work and effort, and I think the personality and skill that you bring, it's a combination of both. So thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Keith?
Chairman, you started our meetings this morning by saying, what incredibly full agendas we faced, and the amount of papers we've had and so forth. So I think it's a great credit to you, particularly, but to non-exec chairs of the different committees as well, just how efficient we've been at working through a lot of material, how we focus on the most important things, and so I think it's actually helpful to keep us focused strategically as a board, that when there is a lot of more routine or regulatory stuff, that we put it in its right place and we don't let it slow us down. So thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Let me just check. Anybody else? Any thoughts? So just to say, again, going back to the pressure that we're aware our executive colleagues are under, and I'm sure I speak for all the non-executives to say that we are here to support you. And if you just want to sound off or have a shoulder to cry on or whatever that is, I'm sure your non-executive buddies will be there for you. And I've certainly extended that invitation to Suzanne from myself, that I'm available 24/7 for anything at all, because we are aware of the pressure you're under, and we are there. It's a unitary board at the end of the day, so we are there and available should you need us. It's not, you don't have to use us, but we're there. So just wanted to make that clear as well.
Can I say one thing?
Marcine, yes, of course.
Today is the American Thanksgiving Day. So as an American, I'd just like to say and give my thanks to you all.
Very good.
Right back at you,
No pumpkin pie.
I'd forgotten that. Where's your turkey?
Yeah, where? And Louise, I'm here for you, but I'm not your 24/7. Joking.
Right. So we'll bring the board meeting to a formal close. I think the next meeting we have is your meeting, Neil, and it's due to start at 2 o'clock. Is that still open?
Andy, we've got the corporate trustee.
Oh no,
meeting.
we have.
Trustee, yeah. Then 2:30 for change.
Yes.
We did get another break, I think.
In my enthusiasm.
We do need a bite to eat since 8 o'clock this morning.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So 2 o'clock is the corporate trustee one. That's right. Absolutely right. Okay. So lunchtime. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.